Recording.
And they can hear us, right?
Yes, we're recording. All right, so this is amazing. My friend Carmen Kaufmann is here tonight, and we are doing an interview that will cover quite a few topics, I think. It's going to cover nutrition, kind of what intuitive eating looks like, what binge eating looks like, different types of eating behavior. We're going to talk about your story, the work that you do, which is incredibly valuable and important. And I can't wait to get started. So I just want to pull up Carmen's her bio so that I can, really give you an overview of who we have with us tonight, because it's a really good opportunity to learn more about what you do and then go through this interview. So Carmen has over 20 years experience working specifically and directly with clients suffering from disordered eating issues. She has worked at all levels of care, from hospital to outpatient healthcare settings. She was the primary therapist for the Child and Youth Eating Disorder Program for the South Fraser region for close to a decade before turning to private practice on the North Shore, which is where we live in beautiful British Columbia. Carmen has also acted in several supervisory, educational, and consultative roles in training university students and other professionals about the treatment of this illness. She currently is a contractor with the Committee of Jesse's Legacy, and I'll ask you more about Jesse's Legacy when we get into the interview, in order to promote education, understanding, and prevention of eating disorders within our communities. She created Way of Life Wellness Studio to address the gaps in service for people suffering with disordered eating. Research shows that if counseling, nutrition, and personal exercise programming are put together in a treatment plan, the likelihood of recovery from disordered eating is extremely favorable. And I will leave it there. There's much more going on on Carmen's website, which happens to be wayoflife.ca, and it is way, W-E-I-G-H, of life.ca, if you want to visit our site. So welcome, Carmen.
Thank you.
It feels so funny talking like this to you, because we're actually quite good friends. We're new friends, but we're like, where have you been all my life? Because
I've been following you my whole life on Instagram.
Because we have an awful lot in common. Our roles really do cross over. We are both personal trainers, but just our mindset around health and wellness for women is so on point. And to find other trainers like that is, as we were just discussing before we hit record here, is not that commonplace.
No.
So I wanted to start this interview with, why were you drawn to this work? And was there something about your own personal story that drew you in?
Many parts, many parts. I think the biggest factor, just even growing up, I talk with my hands a lot, so watch out.
I'll move over.
Okay. When I was growing up, my mom was a larger woman. Her whole family, the whole side of the family was larger. And my father, unfortunately, was a real, what's a good word for this? Like lots of people in the world who saw fat people as less than, that of course they needed to lose weight. If you were fat, you were stupid, and lazy, like all the stereotypes around it. And so when there was fights at home, it would always be about my mom's weight, and he would attack her for her size, her shape, for how she ate, or what she didn't eat. So that was really strong inside of me. And I knew in my family, fat was, you're basically a failure. So of course I didn't want to be that. I wanted my dad's approval more than anything, like lots of women do. We look to our father, and we really do want approval from the male authority in our family. And so I went the other way. And what happened was, as I was going through adolescence, we all put on weight going through adolescence. And I was like every other adolescent, where I was getting, bigger hips, bigger thighs, and the padding in all those places. And my dad started referring to me as porky. And that stung and it really hurt. And I did not want him to see me the way he saw my mother. So I decided to go the other way. And over a course of several years, I went from bulimia to anorexia. And from anorexia, I moved into bodybuilding, where it was a perfect place to hide, which is why I think trainers don't see it. Because when I was in bodybuilding, every trainer around was like, wow, you look really good, you're fit, you're healthy, just by looking at me. And that was probably the sickest point of my life. And I knew I could hide there and it was accepted. Whereas if I was just the anorexic or the bulimic, well, you get identified. I got very, very sick, and that didn't scare me enough to change my ways. It took lots of years of therapy, and I met a really special therapist that made probably the biggest change in my life. And it was from her, the way she approached me was as a person instead of a client or a patient. And that made all the difference to me because it was very genuine. And she was my role model for what I wanted to be. And as I recovered, and I was always interested in fitness, of course, because that's where I went. I was very interested in eating disorders because I saw how many people suffered, and I saw how much you can suffer in silence as well. And people don't have any idea about what you're dealing with because they judge you by what you look like. And as I was working as a specialist in that area, the dogma of the government of how they want, it's kind of like a cover your, am I allowed to say that? A cover your ass scenario?
Yes, of course.
So they say best practice. And I believe in best practices, but I also believe that there should be room to move outside of that box and work with people in an individual way in regards to what their personal needs are. And as much as I love working there, it was an amazing job, I was even more excited to take on my own practice because when I was referring people to trainers, they would get injured. Trainers would push them either too fast, too hard, too much. Motivation would wane and they would end up with all sorts of injuries and they wouldn't follow my directives because I wasn't a trainer at that time. So I was talking crap. And the nutritionists, I'm a nutritionist, not a dietitian, so everybody is aware that there is a difference. So I didn't go to university for 4 years. I did a sports nutrition diploma. So that just gives me enough knowledge to help people who are starting their sport or starting to move their body. What should they be eating or how should they be eating and what's the best way to eat and what are the better choices, blah, blah, blah. But I don't go into, the 4 food groups, or I think there's, how many food groups are there now? I think it's less.
I don't pay attention to
those whole new
pyramids anymore.
Yeah, it's not a pyramid.
It changes every year. It's like, no, now this is the top. No, this is the top.
Yeah, and what's scary though, I wish I had a picture of it. If people have seen the new food guide, it's scary because, and what's amazing is people in my field, nutritionists, dietitians, and therapists are recognizing how dangerous that picture is that they have on. I wish I had a picture. And what it is it shows like such clean eating, such perfect eating. Nobody is going to reach that. And I don't care how healthy you are. It's actually pushing to the point where we have, what is it called? Where people are getting so concerned about their eating that when they're eating, instead of going to what they like or what they choose, everything has to have a function and a reason. And that's not, show that, because that's terrifying, because we don't eat like that. Right? Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but maybe you can pull it up yourself.
Yeah.
But that is that's a disordered eating plate, in my opinion, because what you're showing is perfect, and nobody eats perfect. And I'm glad that nutritionists and dietitians are recognizing that, because I think there is that 80-20 rule or 70-30, whatever it is in regards to your personal health, where you do generally eat what you need to eat, and then the other 30% is always allowing yourself to have those treats and things that you enjoy, but just not to the excessive amount that maybe has been part of the problem, which is when we were going to talk about more binge eating and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's how I arrived here.
So how long were you in disordered eating?
My whole life, if you want to count my personal experience.
Yeah.
But working, I mean, I'm 50 now, so I, right
50,
when I,
can you believe it?
yeah.
Oh my God.
But so I've been working in the field now for close to 25 years, and my private practice for the last, that's a good question, 5, 6 years for private practice.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think Christina has linked that food plan. That's the Canadian Food Guide. Okay, so what I wanted to do with Carmen tonight was kind of identify what certain things look like, so that if you're struggling with nutrition, that you can maybe identify with some of these traits, so to speak. So we all know what diet culture, diet mentality looks like, but I know that we work with women in this group that really kind of slip back into it sometimes. So I want to be very clear about what diet culture, diet mentality looks like.
Well, it's how we all live. I think it's so normalized in our culture that sometimes we don't even realize we're following a diet. But when we're talking about somebody who's using a diet to lose weight, what we're looking for is people who are either, you're omitting an entire food group. So all of a sudden I can't eat dairy, or, carbohydrates are really bad. So they take an entire food group out and they can't participate in eating any of that. It's basically rules. The more rules that somebody has is the more likely you are following a diet. So dieting is allowing yourself to only have certain foods, a certain amount of food. So you're not listening to your body about how much you need. You're measuring and weighing and using an external vice in regards of not listening to yourself. Another part is dieting is, again, like I said, the food choices you make. I'm trying to think of all the other stuff. It's just all the rules, really. Like it's just rules. It's rule oriented, and it has nothing to do with somebody's individual choices of when they want to eat, how they want to eat, or what they actually like.
And it also, for me, when I was dieting, involved hunger. It was just
I was
always hungry. And I think I was always hungry because they were basing my weight loss plan on a BMI metric that I would never be.
Yes.
So they were like, well, you're supposed to be this.
You put me on the BMI, which is a stupid way to measure people. I'm considered obese on the BMI.
So there you have it. No, but I remember, I was a frequent flyer at Weight Watchers for years. And the BMI that they were telling me I should be, I literally hadn't been since I was 11.
Yeah.
And my adult body was never going to be that. And even within the range. So I was hungry all the time, and I just felt deprived. And I think that, the rules and the deprivation and the restriction and
leads to binging.
Yeah. Which we're going to talk about as well.
Yeah.
So the other thing we wanted to ask you about was, what does mindful eating look like? Because there is a difference we were talking briefly about, and there maybe just subtle differences between intuitive and mindful eating. So can you describe what mindful eating is?
My type of mindful eating, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this book by Jan Chosen. Why does it look like it's backwards? Because I have it upside down. No.
That is weird.
Oh, maybe they see it different. This is a great book, and it does come with a disc in the back. And what it talks about here is just basically about rediscovering a healthy and joyful relationship with food. Because for a lot of people, food isn't a joy. It's about fear and judgment and being hungry and restricting. And that's not what mindful eating is about. And it's not a diet. So we're not telling somebody you have to have this many calories. We're not telling somebody that you have to eat at this time. So there's not a lot of external rules. I put a few of my own external rules on top of mindful eating, just simply because the way that I work with mindful eating is I try to get people to really think about and be present instead of just eating in front of the television, sitting on the couch, not really thinking about what we're putting into our bodies. It's getting somebody to really be clear about how they, like, even when you go grocery shopping, that's part of mindful eating. When you go there, how do you shop? Do you shop the perimeter of the store, or do you go through all the other rows, which really there's not a lot of nutrition in those middle rows. So it's being mindful, are you getting the nutrition you need? It's being mindful about what are these foods that I can cook, that I feel confident about, and as you're eating them, are you actually enjoying what you eat? Because when you follow a diet, sometimes you're eating the tuna sandwich for the fourth day, and maybe you really don't like tuna. I hate it. So it's really finding the foods that you enjoy, but also the foods that bring you nutrition and health. And then also mindful eating is about being aware of how that food affects you. So if I'm going to go and play soccer tomorrow and I eat McDonald's for dinner and McDonald's for breakfast, and I'm out in the field and I somehow feel sluggish and slow and not that great, it's being aware and thinking about what did I eat and how did that actually affect me. And it's not about thinking about like allergies. It's about thinking about what kind of power, what kind of energy did I bring to my body, and how is that sitting with me. So really being cognizant, really about your choices. So and it can be any choices you want. Like, I know I love dark chocolate, and that doesn't mean that I can't have it. I love dark chocolate. I love how it makes me feel. At nighttime, I have a bite of it, but I'm not eating the whole thing. And because I know I can have another piece tomorrow and the day after that if I want, I don't eat the whole bar. But if I have a rule that I can't have dark chocolate, all I'm going to think about is chocolate, and I go and eat the carrots and the broccoli and all the things that everybody should be eating according to the food guide, and what I end up doing later on is just eating what I really wanted, which was the chips and the chocolate. So I always tell people, always allow yourself, if your body's real, because whether it's an emotional reason or a physical reason that you need this food, being mindful why you're using it. And if it is to feel something that is not purely hunger, and do you know what hunger even feels like in your body? That's the other part about mindful eating. It's really being aware. I know that I get a headache. I know I get really bitchy. I get short with people when I'm getting hungry. Those are clear signs that I'm actually going too far. Mm-hmm. And I try to catch it before. You should always try to catch your hunger signals, whatever they are for you, and really try to keep track of what they actually are. And catch them before you're at ravenous, because we all know that if we're at ravenous, we're not going to make good choices. We don't have the time to make a good choice. Yeah. We just want to eat something. And what's convenient is convenience foods or fast foods. And that's not really what our body is asking us for most of the time. So you want to make sure that you do give yourself time and you do plan out meals ahead of schedule if you're busy, just so that you do have healthier choices always available. I think they should always be there. It doesn't mean you always have to eat them, but they should always be available.
I just wanted to bring up, I might be making this up, but I think I recall somebody saying that when you're low on calories, it kind of starves the frontal lobe of your brain, which is the portion of your brain that
makes choices,
like that has like reason and like logic and that kind of thing. And so when that's why like that really resonated with me, because if I get to that place of hunger, because I'm very much the hangry type of person, I don't care what it is by that point. Like I'm like get it in as fast as I need. It's almost like an intravenous. I need the sugar in my blood, or I'm going to punch someone out. And it's like that serious for me. So,
but it's very true, because when you look at survival instinct and people talk about the fight or flight, what you're talking about is very true, because hunger is also a survival instinct, right? It's not just fight or flight. There's also hunger and taking care of yourself with that. And it's true, when you're in that place, trying to make logical decisions around what you're going to choose to eat it's not your first and forefront right now. What's first and forefront is food.
Yeah.
And so it's whatever's available.
It's like survival mode kicks in.
It is.
So I really like what you were saying there, because you know how we're accustomed to tracking calories and weighing and like points. Like I'm really on the point value system with Weight Watchers. That's what I was used to tracking. But I really like what you just said about, taking pen to paper. And I think we have some things along the lines of this in the fitness journal that we provide in the program, where you can just start to track how you felt, how your nutrition made you feel. And there's even just boxes that you can tick off. I felt bloated, I felt tired, I felt energized, I felt whatever those boxes are. It was just meant to be to introduce a new way of tracking. And I liked what you said about journaling or being very aware,
introspective is what it is,
of what your hunger cues are.
Yeah. And also because lots of times people, when they're just lonely, they think they're hungry, or they're feeling hurt. Something really shitty happened in their day, and it's that Monday that everybody hates. And that just gives you a good reason when you come home tired and exhausted to say, screw it. But just being able to follow what your patterns are, because awareness, very back of the book here, it even speaks to it. And I love the statement. Where did it go? Sorry, guys. But awareness, it goes, mindful eating is about opening the mind's awareness to our food and to our body before, during, and after we eat. Not being judgmental about it, but awareness is the key to change. Once we are aware of something, it cannot remain the same. Awareness plus small changes in our automatic behaviors, and that's why I'm saying don't let yourself get to the place where it has to be automatic. Plan it out so that you don't end up in that fight or flight kind of situation. And then when you do get there, and if you do make some choices that you don't feel good about, some people just go like drinking. I had one, hell, I'll have 10 more, right? So it's like, I already screwed it up, which is why I don't like diets, because if you break a rule, you just fail. And it's not about failing. Yeah. It's about taking care of yourself. So awareness is the key to change. Once we are aware, it cannot stay the same. Awareness plus small changes to our automatic behaviors can produce large changes over time. And that's the other piece that I really want to speak to is people want it right now. I've been working out and I've added oranges to my diet and I'm eating more fiber and I don't fit into my jeans. I'm not noticing anything different. Time. The slower you can have a change happen to your body, the slower it happens, the more likely it's going to stay. The quicker your body changes, the quicker your body will rebound back. And when you rebound back, what happens is we lose muscle every time we lose weight, which is why I'm a big key of protein. But we lose weight, we lose muscle, our metabolism now has dropped. And if we go back to eating the way we did before, guess what happens? We eat more. And that's where we get the yo-yo from, where we go up and down and up and down. We don't end up back where we were before. We end up even higher. And that's why when I talk to large people, or I don't know what people call themselves, whatever, however they refer to themselves. What have you been doing all your life? All of them say, well, I've been on a diet. And it doesn't work. And if we found a diet that worked, I say this all the time, Oprah would have found it for sure. Yeah, Oprah. But if we found a diet that actually worked, I mean, the world there wouldn't be the variety and shapes that we have. It just wouldn't exist.
We were talking before this, though, that we're like, I believe, and I think you believe as well, but the best course of nutrition is not to be focusing on weight loss. I mean, really, there are people within this program, there are people, myself even, like body composition changes can occur.
Yes.
When you become more active, when you start to eat a more nutritionally dense diet. And sometimes a side benefit to a change of lifestyle can be kind of unintentional weight loss. But when we're looking at what we've all done before in the past, trying like standing on that scale every day.
The scale is the worst place to figure out change. It really is. I can show you pictures of clients who are 173 pounds. And when I finished working with them, they were 175 pounds. And you wouldn't think it was the same person just because body composition changes so much over time. So over time, if you give yourself that benefit of the time, because the key thing about change is consistency. So we're all going to fail at times. We're all going to fall back to old patterns or old beliefs and old behaviors, but it's about getting back on the horse again. And it's kind of like how our brain, we're trying to build a new pattern. We have our neurons go in the same way. Like say, I'm going to talk about anger. Okay, so we get mad fast. That's how we react all the time. But until I start practicing different ways of dealing with my anger, I'm not going to go there in my brain. I'm going to go where where the bear walks, who's treaded up and down that same path. I'm built that way. That's what I've practiced for 20 years. That's where it's going to go. So I have to consciously do the mindful thing and be aware, okay, this is not what I want to do. And I need to build a new path in my brain. Yeah. And I need to start walking down that other one with a swastika and start, not swastika, that was not the word I was trying to say. With
wrong.
The big knife. Machete. And knock down all the weeds and the trees and start building that new path slowly. And that's going to take time because I can't just go mow it all down one day. It's going to take time to build that new path by repeating a new way of responding, a new behavior, like trying to choose to exercise 3 times a week. If you've never exercised before, starting a small goal. Lots of people go, I'm going to do 5 times a week, maybe 7. I'm like, no, we're going to do it once a week. Let's start at once. Let's do it one day different. And then when we successfully do that for a while, 1 week it's pretty easy now. It's in my habits, in my back pocket. Let's build it to 2. So I built on successes instead of going to like all the way over here where we're bound to fail, picking small, mindful goals that you can change. Some of them is just for me, drink 1 more glass of water a day because I hate water. 1 more glass of water a day, even it has to be carbonated because I love it, but I won't drink water. So it's just, it's finding health habits that you want to promote and which in the end will change your body, but you can't focus at weight because when we focus at weight, we're always going to fail. And we have to realize too, genetics plays a big part of what our bodies will do. I will never have skinny legs. I will never have the thigh gap, no matter how small I get. So we have to realize what God gave us too. When we look at our families and the history of our families, not only do they pass us our genetics, they pass us their habits and their beliefs. And so there's a lot more to work with. There's so many layers like an onion that you have to peel to get to the place of change. It's not just about a diet.
I love that you use the analogy of anger because I've actually had to, really look at that. I grew up like just flipping my lid in my house all the time. Like my family actually makes fun of me because I used to say, I hate everyone in this house, like at least 3 times a week. And that I like the analogy of the bear too, because they do, like we live in bear country. So
yeah, that's why I use bear.
So bears, they will beat down a path and they'll use that path over and over and over again. And I think the default in our society is not health.
No.
The default is not health. It's very convenient. The default is convenience.
It is.
And I get it because we're living in a very demanding, fast-paced society. So it's about also knowing, like with anger, what the triggers are.
Yes.
Like
and what your triggers are, you're right. You nailed a really good point. And that's why I love people to journal, not just about what you feel mindfully, body, mind, feelings. It's also looking at exactly what Louise just said. A lot of people aren't even aware what a trigger is. Sometimes it can be just watching TV and seeing a food commercial. It can be that simple.
Totally.
Which is why I say don't watch TV when you eat. But it can be maybe being hurt one day, feeling rejected. Maybe you went out and you were judged. Maybe you're feeling really down on yourself, and it's a way to nurture yourself because food is one thing that I always loved Janine Roth's work. She wrote When Food is Love. And for many people, food's not going to hurt you. It's going to always be there. It's been a friend and a foe at times, but it's always been there. And for some people, it's one of the safest places that they can go to nurture themselves, because going to people is just too frightening and too scary and too judgmental.
Yeah. And for me, like I think the way that I started to create an unhealthy relationship with food when I was a kid was because I felt lonely. Like my parents worked and I lived in a very wealthy community, and all the other kids, their moms were at home making muffins and cookies and stuff. And I would go home and nobody would be there. And I would like eat peanut butter sandwiches and like eat one. And I was just feeling lonely. Yeah. So, now sometimes I'm like, oh, there's that again. Right. So it is about awareness, and it is about knowing what the triggers are and kind of leading down a different path. I really like that. So
Yeah.
we've talked about the mindful eating. Can we move on to intuitive eating, or did we kind of cover that as well?
Well, intuitive eating, I think the way I see the difference, I'll speak to how I see it. Intuitive eating to me is where you're aware of what you want and you intuitively go to what you need. I can practice that now because I've done mindful eating for so long. And, but I don't think people who have been in touch with what their body needs and they haven't taken care of their body, I don't think they can actually intuitively, because they don't intuitively know anything in regards to how their body is trying to communicate to them, which is why I try to get people to step back from the very beginning and looking at what does hunger feel like, what does thirst feel like, what does loneliness feel like, what does anger. I used to eat out of anxiety. Mine was worry and anxiety. I wouldn't taste a goddamn thing. I would just be stuffing stuff down, and I needed to fill that gnawing hole, but it never did. But that's what I was trying to attack. Yes. And I had to learn a different way to deal with my anxiety and get a different toolkit, which is why I always offer counseling with this, because there's so many issues. Like I said, it's an onion. It's not just about weight or body size or shape, or there's so many other issues that are tied into why we do what we do.
So what do you do for anxiety? Because I'm definitely that oral fixation, that soothing thing as well. Yeah. And, to kind of, and it's like with anxiety for me, like it happens a lot with my work, and things will get really busy and lots of things are happening, and I get anxious, and it's kind of exciting, but at the same time I'm scared of it. And so I will pacify.
Yeah. And you're probably not even aware what you're doing. Yeah. So that's the other part. Number one, mindful is being aware. Number two is realizing when you do log this and you go, holy cow, like I do eat because I'm lonely, or I do eat because of anxiety, like you're saying. And then starting to look at what can I do differently. So thinking of the bear, building a path somewhere else. What are some other ways that other people deal with anxiety? Who's been successful with working with it? Do you know somebody who does have anxiety? And thinking and reading up on it, maybe going to see somebody about it, talk to someone about it, or you can just start to practice new things. Like I'm feeling anxious. I know for me now, when I'm anxious, I know the food's not going to help. It's just going to make me feel more anxious about what I just ate. I go to exercise. I go for a walk. I go to nature. I go hug my dog. I read a book. I have a bath. So I just think about self-care, and I also think about self-compassion. And I think that's the biggest thing, is having compassion for ourselves instead of hard-ass, cold judgment about what we don't do right. And recognizing that we're human, we all F up. And that's okay. That's part of the human experience. Yeah. And giving yourself compassion when you need it. And if you really do need the goddamn ice cream that day, and you sit around, don't stuff yourself full of broccoli and carrots for 10 minutes. Go and get the ice cream and let yourself have a piece. Then sit with it. Sit with it. After you've had a bite or two, and you really taste the ice cream, how it feels in your mouth, how it feels in your body. Don't eat it mindlessly where you're just going from the bucket. You put your portion in your cup, you sit down with it, you really think about what you're doing, you enjoy it, you savor it, and you always know you can have more. So the one thing, when people stop even for 5 minutes and they think about this, if they have a few scoops, I know that if I have like 2 pieces of chocolate, I'm good. Yeah. Like I'm good. I really don't need to eat more. And I know that I can have more. So it doesn't become like, oh, I better eat this whole thing because I'm not going to eat anymore tomorrow. Yeah. Or I'm going to eat this and I've messed up, so I'm just going to cram it all in my face and start again tomorrow. Well, my husband, I know we all use husbands for, I love nibs. They're my thing. And I have them in my nightstand. And when I'm watching TV just before bed, I'll have a few nibs and I really enjoy them. My husband also enjoys them, but he has rules, and he's a physician. Physicians, by the way, get 2 hours of nutrition information through their whole training. We're trying to change that. They get 2 hours. And that's why when you go to a doctor, what the doctor's going to say, go on a diet. And if you think about when somebody tells you to go on a diet, we know what the failure rate of diets are. They're like 95 to 98% failure rates. Now, if there was a disease that Louise had, and I said, Louise, I've got a pill for you. It's got a 95% failure rate. So it's probably not going to fix you, but you need to take this.
Yeah.
And that's what doctors are doing with saying, here, you need to go on a diet, which is ludicrous. And I can't believe that it hasn't changed sooner, because we're really doing people a disservice by doing that. Absolutely.
Move more, eat less.
Yes.
The old status
yes,
quo.
yes. And I still see it all over lots of trainers and lots of people's things, that it's only about calories in, calories out. That's not true. That is not true. You have to think about what is somebody choosing to eat? Where are there, like when you're anxious and you're eating when you're anxious, you have a whole different hormonal bath going on. And if your insulin's being released, you're more likely going to store fat. So there's way more problems with that energy in, energy out model. There's so many more things that we have to look at in regards to, I think, considering health first. Yeah.
So do you think we covered the intuitive eating?
Okay, intuitive eating, real quick. Intuitive eating is for somebody probably who's really aware of their body, is feeling pretty comfortable with their shape, their size, and they can trust themselves that their body's going to tell them exactly what they need to eat. I don't necessarily believe my clients, when they come to see me, are ready for that, because they don't have the insight yet or the introspection yet to really to know what gives them energy, to know what makes them feel down, to know what, because we know carbohydrates, why people go to carbohydrates if they haven't eaten enough calories. They go to carbs because carbs actually increase serotonin in the brain. And it's like a natural antidepressant. We feel better. You feel better. It soothes you until you go and you look at your plate or your box of whatever you're eating and it's all gone. Then the anxiety kicks in. Then we're releasing insulin, which is also going to help us store that. So there's so many like pieces that just kind of fit together. So with intuitive, I think that's down the road with awareness.
For people that have done work. And I know that there's, I believe there's people in this group right now that are working with like practitioners for intuitive eating. And I think that that's a good thing to do. Not just to be like, oh, I'm going to try this intuitive eating model if you're really still struggling and because I know for me, like it's a concept that I have a hard time with. Because,
well, when food is still coping,
yeah,
it's hard to intuitively eat when food is coping.
Yeah. So really looking after those issues, and that's why when you work with a practitioner, they're obviously looking at those issues as well as trying to instill that model, right? So that it's like twofold. So I think that is, I really like what you said there, the difference there, because I didn't know what the difference was. And
that's my take on the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with mindful, it's not about rules. It's about developing that awareness. It's about getting really aware about why you're using food to cope, what you need to change for yourself, giving yourself permission and compassion through the whole process.
I like that. I think somebody was asking the author of this book.
This is Jan Chosen Bays. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I think the new one does not include the audio program, so make sure you ask for the old book, because the audio program is awesome. If you have something you can actually play that on. Yeah. And my biggest thing is with mindful eating too is if I have to say I have a rule, my rule would be, especially if you're exercising, if you're starting to change your whole lifestyle with exercise, a lot of people aren't aware of how much protein we need. And I always tell people, always get your protein in at the end of the day. That's the biggest one, because it's easy to get our fats. It's easy to get our carbs in this day and age. But what people tend to lack is getting their protein in, good quality proteins. And so you can go by, people have heard macros and micro stuff in regards to the diet. Micros, all your nutrition in regards to like your magnesium, how much calcium, how vitamins and minerals you're getting. Macros are how many carbohydrates do you eat daily, how many fats do you eat daily, and how much protein do you eat daily. And my biggest one is focus on the protein, because that's where people tend to really slip up. And when you don't have enough protein, you tend to go to the fats and the carbs. So, and protein is really filling as well. It's quite filling. And I use protein shakes. I'm addicted to my protein shakes. And it's not something that I force myself to do. I actually really enjoy them. And I miss them when I'm traveling. If I haven't brought them with me and I'm going out for breakfast, I really actually miss them. And I haven't convinced myself into eating the way I eat because I don't have rules. I can eat anything that I really want. And I think the biggest change for me, this is when I was talking about my husband and nibs. This kind of ties together. Here we go. So if he comes into the bed and he's sitting in what he knows where my nibs are, and he can't have nibs. He's trying to lose weight. He can't, and I live with him. Yeah.
He can't on his own rules.
He will, in his rules, nibs are bad.
Yeah.
And he will eat all of my nibs. I'll go to get one because I keep them by the bedside and I'm going to have a few and they're all gone. And my husband basically, there's his rule and it shows up. He ate them all and he ate them all because tomorrow he's not allowed to have any more. But then when he meets them again, he's going to do the same thing. So he ends up binging a lot. We even have a lot cupboard in our house, but that's a whole different story.
And that's on his own, his own thing, right?
Yeah, he's a doctor and he has real difficulty buying into what I'm selling, which is health at every size. And I really do believe we all have a shape and size that is unique to us. And what we can change is our composition in regards to the quality of foods and the quality of exercise we get. And not to talk harshly about my husband, but he really has what he learned in medical school is exactly what he's been doing. And he's 50 and he's larger now than he has ever been in his life. And he still is choosing a diet. He thinks he's going to find the right one. He's on the internet and finds the right one. He orders stuff. He has supplements. He's wasted so much money. And he's just getting bigger.
So I think also what I think I know that you work with your clients predominantly with as well, and what I want to work with my clients with is it's not just about body composition and all that stuff, but it's about the relationship with food. And like you say, like if we have a poor relationship with food, we tend to act out with food and cope with food, which then can create a lot of remorse and a lot of like stopping those cycles.
And if I agree, and if we just said, I'm not going to do this anymore with food, if you really don't have awareness underneath of your issues about your relationship with food, it just transfers. It goes to shopping, it goes to sex, it goes to drugs, it goes to alcohol. It just transfers, and because we'll find something else that will soothe us, right? So it's figuring out what we need to soothe and having that toolkit of other things when we go, okay, I'm aware enough now. I'm truly not hungry, but what do I need, and how can I fill that need? And building a toolkit all around that. And that I'm a big fan of people just writing down all those ways that you can do self-care. It could be reaching out to a friend saying, hey, can we go for dinner? Hey, can we go for a walk? Where's that puppy of mine? Like whatever it is that gives you those, it's basically what it releases those hormones. Food releases hormones in our body that make us feel better. And that's why I'm saying it's about self-care. You have to go and figure out what else can you do that gives you that same hormonal bath where you just feel taken care of.
Because a lot of that is, and it's no secret here that I have an addictions background, not in the professional world, but in the actual using, right? And a lot of addiction is, and I'm not saying that food is addictive or anything like that. That might be a whole other conversation, but it's about filling a hole. Now, whether it's I'm not enough, I'm alone, or I'm whatever it is, so exactly what you're saying.
I'll never change. I always fail. And that's what diets teach us to do, and then we go back.
Like I know that I struggle more with my food now that I don't drink. So exactly what you say is, and it's why when people quit smoking, they go to food. It's transferring because we're still trying to fill something. So if we're doing the work on the internal side on like, what is it that I'm not feeling enough? What is the hole? What is my anxiety about? Like I'm soothing it with this, but what actually is it? Because this is just
it's finding
a Band-Aid.
name. Being able to name it and being able to address it in a whole new way that you're not used to doing,
Yeah.
which is really scary.
Beating down another path.
But it's terrifying. It's
In bear
scary. And that's why I
country.
say people need support. You
Yeah.
really need support. And if you have people moving through this journey with you, being able to call on each other, that's why alcoholics have their sponsor. They do that in NA as well. I think OA has that, but I'm not saying that going to that kind of rule-oriented thing, but having somebody that can remind you when you're in that state about what direction do you want to go.
Mm-hmm. We are like almost at the hour here, and I want to make sure, like, that blows by so fast, right?
Yeah, it does.
So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we have an open Q&A.
Can I say one more
Yes.
thing? Sorry. Okay, there's one other thing that I really think is important when people are trying to change their weight. They will start with, like, if it's a diet or restricting in some form or just choosing to eat less, what I really want to talk about is how you do set yourself up. Because when you restrict and you don't have enough, or giving yourself what you actually want, you're actually setting yourself up for binging. And that's why it's really important to load your day with foods that you love.
And I've also heard somebody say, multiple people say, like, especially for athletes, which I like to say here that we're building athletes, is athletes are on a model of abundance. Like, if you look at a lot of athletes, like, they are eating large amounts of food, right?
Yeah.
So adding foods in that just make you feel good and
to give you the energy to get off the couch and do that workout, right? Because I know that if I just stick to, I do like McDonald's, but I do know my relationship with McDonald's is not a good one, because the next day I know I'm not going to have the same drive. I don't really care to exercise, and I get in those funks. But I also have one rule for myself too, is that if I go 3 days without moving my body, I need to do it anyway and sit down and figure what that was about. So I've just got a little, like, I can give myself some leeway, because there is times when you're sore, tired, legitimately, absolutely, you need a break and you're going to pass on the workout. That's okay. But you need to really set a kind of a guideline for yourself where, if I haven't moved my body in some way in, whatever your timeline is, and then you say, then I really have to A, move my ass, and B, look at what that was about. What was that about? Was it really truly fatigue, or was there something else happening? Because we do that with movement as well.
Yeah.
Because there's people who have addictions with exercise. I mean, we can have addiction with almost anything.
Anything, yeah. And I've talked about that. I think I write about it in my book, where one of the things that I used to do quite a bit with excuse making around exercise is the underbelly, because I'm all about what's under the belly now. Like, I want to know. Is fear. It's fear of something. It's fear of going to the class. It's fear of putting myself out there. It's fear of failure. It's fear of judgment. It's fear. So I think it's great. Like, legit, it can be 2 or 3, 4 days of not moving, right?
Yeah.
Life gets going, and
it does.
But when it is, in that all or nothing place, where now we're into that nothing mode, and it's taking everything we can just to get back on the track.
And you can't leave that too long.
Yeah.
Because like, if I go through the drive-thru at McDonald's 3 times, I need to look at what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
I know that something's not right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I allow myself McDonald's, but I mean, I hate the word allow, but I mean, I love McDonald's, but I'm only using this as an example. But I know that if I've been through that drive-thru the 3rd time on day 3,
and they've got your order ready before you hit the window, they're like, "Oh, hey, Carmen."
Yeah. So I know there's something going on.
Yeah. Okay, so before we sign off on this recording, is there 3 tips we can take away with? We've gone through a lot of tips here, and one of them I want you to say. Can I say it?
Yeah. You say
is I want people to really think about their hunger cues and triggers.
Compassion. Have compassion for yourself, because this is a process. It's a journey. There's not like the end destination. It's this whole trip we're taking. Have compassion for yourself. Awareness of what you're doing, why you're doing what you do, and having the vulnerability to try a new path, to try something that is completely foreign to you and can be really scary. Figure out how to get the support to reach out and do it, but just trying something new. And that might not work for you, but you know what? You just learned something about yourself. now you can try something else. You can find a new path and find something that is focused towards a long-term health and wellness, not about where my weight's going to end up.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for having me.
Yeah,